Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Thomas Brush. I'm the creator of a game called Pinstripe, also a game called Once Upon a Coma, which is launching in a month, I guess, on Nintendo Switch, Xbox, PS4, and pretty much every other platform you can think of. One of the coolest tools in Unity is the terrain tool. It's really easy to learn, and if you learn the basics, you could pretty much create some incredible looking worlds, even worlds that look a lot like Breath of the Wild. So let's go ahead and jump into Unity and I'll show you how we can create terrains in Unity. I already said that. Let's go. I want to thank Exola. Exola is a video game business engine helping gaming companies of all types and sizes sell and monetize their games around the world since 2005. They've got a versatile, dynamic platform. Exola lets you sell any type of digital good to support any monetization model you choose. So you can easily sell and manage pre-orders, subscriptions, any kind of microtransaction, virtual items, virtual currency, loot boxes, season passes. I mean, there's also a pre-integrated SDK for Unity and Unreal. Actually, that's actually really huge. So setup is Snap. That's a Snap. Exola accepts payments from over 700 payment methods worldwide with built-in coverage for taxes, legal compliance, and more. So it makes it really, really easy for you guys. So right now you can download a free ebook from Exola. Thank you, Exola, for the free ebook to help you learn some best practices for how to monetize your games. Guys, monetization is huge. So just visit the link in the video description. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and open up our Unity hub and we're gonna create a new project called, what are we gonna call this? Terrain Land. And we're gonna create Terrain Land and we're gonna create a 3D project. I go straight to the asset store and I install the standard assets. And right away, click download, click import. And we're not gonna be picky here, guys. We're just gonna import every single asset. Rule of thumb, guys, don't ever be afraid to use an asset. It's a great way to learn, for one, but it also saves a ton of time in the long run. You don't really need to create everything from scratch anymore in games. There's so many assets available to us. All right, so you might get a couple of alerts here. We're just gonna clear those. We're not gonna worry about those. And we're gonna go straight to our scene and we're gonna delete our main camera, okay? The reason why is because we're gonna go to our standard assets. We're gonna go to our first person character controller. We're gonna go to our prefabs and we're gonna drag in the FPS character. And then what we're gonna do is go to our game objects, 3D objects, and we're gonna create a terrain. Now, right away, you're gonna notice your computer is starting to slow down and things are starting to change. What's going on with all my colors? What's happening right now is it's automatically starting to bake in ambient occlusion and all sorts of lighting. So what we're gonna do is go to our lighting tab here, and you might need to go to window lighting to get there. And we're gonna turn off mixed lighting right away. We don't want things to bake. We want to use real-time lighting, at least for this tutorial. Let's turn off auto generate, and then we're going to click this tab here and clear the baked data. We don't want any confusing weird artifacts left over from when it was trying to bake. All right, so what we're going to do is actually position our camera towards the center here. And what I like to do is select my FPS controller, click game object, and then go to align with view. So now the FPS controller with its camera are actually exactly where I was in the scene view. What I like to do is create a 3D cube, double click it, and place it exactly on the ground. The reason I do this is it gives us an idea of scale. Your character, your FPS controller, should be double the size of the cube. So now you can see we have a good idea of the player scale and how things should look. And that's going to help us in the long run in creating our mountains. The worst thing is to not know how big your mountains should be based on the character's size. So that gives you a good idea of how big things should be. All right, let's click on our terrain here, and you'll see these little tabs here. The first one is going to be your create neighbor terrains. So if we select that, we can actually create multiple terrains around this single terrain here. And you can see they're created here. And what I like to do is just drag them so that they're all sort of stacked on top of each other. If you wanted to, you could parent them inside of an empty game object, but for now, we're gonna keep it this way. You won't necessarily need this many, but just for the sake of example, I wanna show you how you can create them, and you could pretty much create as many as you want. The next tab is our Paint Terrain tab. And this is where we can actually raise and lower terrain. We can set the height of the terrain. We can also smooth out the terrain. We can paint texture onto our terrain. So this is really the tab that you're going to be spending the majority of your time on. So we're going to go to Paint Texture. And it's important to note that when you want to paint, let's say, a grass texture, you are not going to be creating a new brush. The brushes are how the actual texture is painted onto the ground, but it's not the texture itself. What you're going to want to do is actually go to Edit Terrain Layers. You're going to want to create a new layer, and then we're going to type in grass, and you can see we have a grass hill albedo included with our standard assets. So we're going to double click on that. And as you can see, a new layer was created. So we're going to select this layer, and now, as you can see, we can actually paint this texture onto our terrain. So as you can see, it's very faint, so what we're going to do is we're going to make it pretty large and pretty opaque. And now we can sort of paint this onto our world. There we go. So if you hit play, you'll see that the grass is now painted onto our world. Looks pretty terrible, huh? So what we're going to do is actually go to our terrain, and what I want to do is create some mountains now. So instead of painting on a texture, we can actually raise or lower the terrain here. And we can actually choose a pattern for raising and lowering our terrain. I'm actually just going to use this smooth brush here. And what we're going to do is go to our brush size. Let's keep our brush size the same, and let's keep our opacity the same. And now you can see we can raise and lower our height all across this world. And so in the distance here, we don't need that much detail. We just want them to be pretty high. But what we're going to really focus our attention on is this center square here. As you can see, the center square is actually very large, so we can focus all of our attention on that. So let's decrease the size of our brush and create some mountains here, just like so. And so I want to sort of surround my player with mountains, sort of lock him in. So just do something like this. And if you guys want to add a little bit of detail after you've created the base abstract look, you can go to this brush here and create some sort of ripples in the ground. See that? And so it's really whatever you want it to be, you can create it. So we've got it pretty aggressive right here. So let's go ahead and smooth it out a little bit. That brings us to this tool here, which is the smooth height. So we're going to select that, select our simple circle brush, change the size, bring the opacity down a little bit, and what you can do is actually smooth out a lot of the details you made. So notice how it's slowly smoothing it out. So far it looks pretty good. So in general, that's how you raise and lower the height of your world. So now we have a pretty detailed looking mountainscape. And what I want to show you right now is how we can actually paint details onto the terrain. So we have this grass, and so what I want to do is go back to our paint texture, and we're going to create a dirt layer. So let's create a layer. Let's type in dirt or stone or grass. There it is, grass rocky albedo. Double click that. And what we can do is select it, make sure it's selected, and let's bring the size of the brush down significantly. Bring that opacity down to about 17%. And we can go ahead and start painting various bits of texture all over our world, give it a little bit of detail. So this is just creating an abstract look for our mountains. Nothing too specific here, just gives it a little bit of detail. And then what we can do is, just like in a game maybe like Breath of the Wild, you could actually create some roads. So decrease the brush size to about 40 or maybe even 15. And we can just create some roads sort of going around. Here's the thing about Unity and a lot of terrain tools. You can't create really hard edges. Even if I used this brush here, the edges aren't very hard. And that's because we're not actually painting onto the terrain. What we're doing is we're telling Unity where we want a texture to appear and loop. So what we're actually painting is something sort like a mask, an image mask or a matte, telling Unity where we want this looping texture to appear. If it was a hard-edged road, it would actually be a ton of data for Unity to calculate. It'd be a huge high-resolution image, and we can't do that. Woohoo! So as you can see, we have a road here that's cutting through the valley, and that's just using the simple brush tools provided with the terrain tool. Let's exit play mode, and what I want to show you now is how we can create grass to make things not look so, I don't know, bland, and also this looping texture here is really causing a lot of problems. It's making things look not so great. So what we can do to fix that is start adding in our grass. So let's select this tool here. It's called the Paint Details tool. And what we can do is actually paint various 3D objects, whether it's grass or rocks or flowers or bushes, pretty much anything you want to paint onto this terrain, a 3D object, you can do it using the Paint Details tool. What we're going to do is go down to this Edit Details tab. Again, you're not going to be creating a new brush. Anytime you're thinking about a brush with Unity's terrain, think about Thomas brush. No, think about a brush being an actual mask or a matte. It's just telling Unity what you want the shape to be of the 3D object that you're painting. And I'll show you what I mean in just a second. So let's go down here and click Edit Details. What we can do is create a new grass texture, and you'll see this little window pop up here. And fortunately, because of those standard assets we imported, we can actually find a 2D texture that's already ready for us. So let's type in grass, and you'll notice this is the grass we want to use. So we can double click on that, and these various details here we'll skim through really quickly. You can choose you can choose the width that you want the grass to be and the height, and it sort of randomizes between a minimum and a maximum. You can choose the noise spread. You can choose what you want the color of the healthy or dead grass to be tinting towards, and then also billboard, which means it's always going to face the player. If we turn this off, it won't always face the player, and it'll kind of look kind of like paper grass. So let's click Add, and right away we can start adding in our grass. Now obviously we'll want to paint our grass not where this stone is. There we go. And you'll notice the grass is being culled slowly. It looks kind of bad right now, but as you start adding details into your world, you'll notice you don't really need to see grass that's far away. So there's some grass. What we can do is actually change the size of the brush, so pretty small here. And we can also decide how many pieces of grass we want to paint using the opacity. So we can bring it down pretty low, and you'll notice it's not really painting anything, is it? We can bring up the opacity, there we go. There we go. And so if we wanted some bits of grass in the actual road, we could do it that way. So we've got our grass painted, and finally we can create another grass detail using Add Grass Texture, and we're going to choose the other grass texture, which would be this one. And click Add. What you want to do is be sure you select it, and now we can paint that grass and cause some variation in our grass. Pretty cool. Let's increase the opacity and the brush size, and let's just create a ton of grass. Let's fall into our world. Sorry, I need to position my character. So as we walk towards the grass, you can see it's slowly culling into view. Pretty cool. And you can see it even blows in the wind. And we can control that in the settings of our terrain. Really, really cool. So our world is slowly starting to come together just with the built-in Unity tools. And let's create some trees. So let's go to our tree tool here, paint some trees. And let's go ahead and edit our trees. Let's add. And then we're going to go to the built-in And then we're going to find a tree that is included in the standard assets. So as you can see, we have 3 trees here. Just look for this little tree icon and you're going to want to double click which one you want. So the conifer actually looks really great. So make sure your tree is selected, and we want to make sure that the tree density isn't too high. So we're going to decrease that a little bit. And you can see our trees are starting to paint into our world. And those are some pretty harsh shadows, so we'll probably need to change that in just a bit. So it's really good to paint sort of from the perspective of what you think the player is going to be seeing. Now, the cool thing about these trees is you can paint a ton of trees and Unity won't slow down. And the reason why is it's got an LOD group attached to it. And I won't get into too much detail, but what an LOD does is it basically tells Unity to slowly decrease the quality of the tree as you zoom away. So you can see that I can't talk. So you can see that the trees are slowly changing. They will eventually fade away. There they go. Bye-bye. So if we zoom in, they slowly become 3D trees. Pretty cool. So you could paint them all over the place if you wanted to, all over. And basically what it's gonna do is just create a billboard of various PNGs. Woo! Drop down and we have a tree world. And then we can create other trees. Let's create another tree, and we're gonna go to hey, how about a conifer? Pretty cool, pretty cool. Select our conifer here and look, ooh, wow, Thomas, very nice. These shadows for these trees are really harsh, so let's just really quickly go into our directional light and decrease the strength of these shadows. Very nice. And as you can see, we've got tons of trees. I keep skydiving in. Why don't I change that? And some of you might be wondering, Thomas, how would I get those trees in the distance to not look so crappy? Well, you could create stones or various bits of grass, place them around the tree so things don't look so obviously terrible. You can also have some settings you can change here. You can change the size of the brush, the density of the trees, the tree height, and lock the width to the height. And what I want to show you now is how we can create a lake down at the bottom of this. Where would we put a lake? There we go. Let's put one down here. So let's go, first off, let's create some terrain. So we're going to raise the terrain up to about, let's see here. Let's raise this one up. This is just me trying to give you guys an example of how we're going to do a lake. And what's really cool about this is even if you've placed trees and grass and texture, you can change the height of the terrain, and the trees and the texture will move with your terrain. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, so we can raise that up here. And now, guys, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a lake or a pond. So included in your standard assets, you can include, or you can search for water, and you have all these cool prefabs. Again, look for the prefabs, and they're just these square images here. You'll see the icon, it's a box. So let's go to water for, I really like water for simple. We're gonna drag that into the scene. Ooh, very nice. And what we're gonna do is just scale it. And you can see why I created the terrain to raise up around it, because if it was right here, you'd actually see it clipping. But we can actually sort of lower it down here. And there's plenty of cool settings in our water for basic script that we can change. What I want to change is the edge fade. I think it's a little too smooth. So now it's nice and crisp on the edges. Guys, I want to show you how you can delete some of these trees. Trees don't grow in water. So what we're going to do is select our tree, and then if you hold shift, you can erase those trees, right? But trees do grow around water, don't they? There we go. Very nice, very nice. And then to create some shoreline, see, you can just start figuring out what your world looks like. Don't worry about it, you know? Don't worry about making things look perfect. Just have fun with it. And you'll slowly see your world come to life. Oh man, it's looking good. You know, grass doesn't grow in a lake, does it? So let's go ahead and go to our Paint Details tab. Just press Shift. Make sure you select the grass. and you can erase your grass and then paint it around. The grass is a little bit sparse, so let's go ahead and increase our target strength to 1 here. Now we can add a little bit more grass to the edges of this water. Very nice. It's kind of cozy, isn't it? And it's not perfect, but overall, guys, this is how your terrain tool works inside of Unity. Really beautiful. Now I'm gonna do a quick speed run to show you guys how we can take this sort of generic looking terrain and just with a couple image effects, make it look absolutely gorgeous. So let's go. So with a couple image effects, you can make your landscape just look absolutely incredible. We have some bloom and some grain, some color correction and some motion blur. So if we hit play, you'll notice that things just look really beautiful just with adding a couple image effects. Now obviously this isn't perfect, guys, but this is a very quick tutorial on how you can create terrain in Unity. Thanks guys for watching. Alright guys, what did you think? Pretty cool. Unity has some incredible tools, and the terrain tool is, I guess, one of the most important tools in your 3D arsenal. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button. Also leave a comment and hit the bell notification icon thingy to get notified of my new uploads. Also, if you guys want to support, you can wishlist my games using the links in the description, and also support me on Patreon. That would really mean a lot. Thanks.